Good afternoon, or should I say good evening. In about an hour's time, it's going to be dark. As you can hear, it's raining. I'm somewhat under shelter. This time of the season, as we sort of approach June, a lot of the forests and woods in England kind of look tropical. There's a lot of green, especially with this rain. It's almost like this torrential rainfall. It's almost very rainforesty. You get a lot of interesting wildlife that comes out. The older I grow, the more of a patriot I actually become to England. Maybe not necessarily the politics, but definitely the land itself. I think England, like many places in Europe, is very underrated. The nature is very underrated. It's a very beautiful place. If you know where to go. If you get out of the cities and you go to the outskirts, and if you go to things like Lake District, the Peak District, and other districts, of course, if you go up to Scotland, I've been, I guess you say, all over the world, and my favourite place is always Scotland. So it's a warm day today. I'm enjoying this rain, this light rain. It's just giving me a nice. It's quite hot and there's a little bit of chill in the air, but the rain's just sort of cooling me down. So I want to do a video today talking about how when we travel and we come across people and we come across situations and locations, that we all are actually similar. And the world is kind of bleeding together and we're all kind of becoming one. As much as people don't like to admit that or talk about that or acknowledge that. Now, I should just start by saying, with all different cultures and all different countries, of course, in all different territories, of course, we're not gonna ever be on the same page. Because if you look at it's like a bit like how there's so many planets and there's so many stars. Within our own nature of being humans, we all decide to do things differently. We have different religions. We have different ways of government. With different ways we approach government, different ways governments function. We have different ideas. We have different ideas on death. We have different ideas on lifestyle. Some of the Mediterranean countries much prefer to have a more relaxed pace of life, where they and that's not to say all I believe all life is stressful. Everybody is working hard, but definitely some of those countries, more Eastern European, there's a more relaxed way of life and there's more emphasis on food and community and coffee. If you come to somewhere like the UK, there's a bit of emphasis on family, but I wouldn't say there's as much, and I wouldn't say it's as important. It's like a little spider in a copper just spinning around. I don't know if it's spinning a web, I don't know if it's just the rain's just knocking it about. Whenever I make videos, I desperately try not to, I don't know if that's the right word, I just try not to make videos about race, sexual orientation, anything like that, because there's three reasons. Three reasons actually. The first one is I find it quite boring. I think there's bigger things happening in the world, and I get your own individuality is very important, but I believe we can solve that quite easily and then move on, and then we can start talking about the bigger things. Another reason is, if I don't want to do the work of an ethnic minority. I don't want to do the work of somebody who perhaps is gay and they want to be the ones who talk about their hardship. I don't want to be the person who's being their mouthpiece, because I'm not an ethnic minority. I'm not, I guess, an ethnic minority in my country. I'm not gay, so these aren't things I face. The things I can look at just by being intelligent. I can see and I can understand them, and I can have an opinion on them, but I'm not going to be making content about it. And I guess the third reason, there was a third reason, but I can't even remember it now, is I think you put yourself in kind of hot water, because unless you approach the subject comedically and people know that you're joking, which I think actually approaching these kind of subjects, I'm not talking about a comedian who stands up and just keeps talking about, you can't cancel me, I'm going to say this joke, it might get me cancelled, and then everybody's like, oh. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about, I don't know if any of you know who Matan is, but he did a brilliant impression of a stand-up the other day on Bad Friends, a podcast, he pretended to like racially profile people and to like throw people out, and it was really funny. That sort of crowd work a comedian does. So yeah, I don't want to ever really do that. So, but in this video, I'm going to have to lean a little bit into talking about that sort of stuff. So I'm sort of borrowing from these conversations. And one of the most interesting things you find about race and about different cultures, let's not even make it about race, about different cultures when you go to a new country as an outsider, as a foreigner, or you even immigrate to a new country, that sounds like slight music. There could be people in these woods. It's quite possible. Because, yeah, you hear that? Like gunshot. It's very possible people are out today shooting, walking the dog. So I heard some music. It's very possible there's somebody around here. Anyway, when we actually do look at, I'm talking a bit quieter now. When we actually do look at, somebody just comes by, there's a kid in the woods talking about race. You notice there's this. So if you look up the list of you can, it's really interesting. It's a Wikipedia list, and you can look up each country and who they're racist against and why they're racist and racism in that country, and you find out that we're all kind of racist against each other. But what's really interesting is, and obviously we know that comedy kind of settles that aside, and then the fact that we grow up in like a melting pot, we can, we're looking at somebody as our own. So all that aside, that's all your basic stuff. You see that people, white knight isn't the right word. I don't know if it's virtual thinking, whatever it is. You find a lot of people find it very cool. They feel it's a very cool thing to have a friend. So I'm talking from a white perspective now, who's non-white. They find they'll you can see them. They can sort of like they'll hang around their group and then make it all about them, and they're very proud of it. When I was a bit younger, it was a lot more open. Like people would openly talk about having a gay friend, or they'd openly talk about I'm friends with this black guy, or whatever. But now, as we've moved on, that's a bit lame to say that now. So there's kind of this covering, and you see, we all know the joke that white people, the people are getting offended. But just going off that, what we see is that people are pretending. People are using other ethnicities and other cultures for their own outlook. It's fashionable, if you know what I mean. And I'm very, because when I travel, I like taking a lot of photos. And I'm very cautious not to step into that territory. I think I might step into it a little bit just by taking the photos, but there's obviously appreciation in enjoying different cultures and bringing different cultures to other people. But there is this sense. There's always this sense when I travel, and I think it doesn't necessarily come out of myself. I think it comes out of others, that if I see like if I talk to my grandparents can't even believe I'm on a plane. So there's this kind of this like sense that I am this sort of, within my family, my community, that I'm this figure who's going to all these interesting places, what are so far into people back home. And that kind of plays in your head, and you kind of buy into this thing. And then when you see other people around you who aren't traveling, and you do get this sense of pride. And there is a thing, I don't know if you guys ever, whatever country you live in, whatever country you travel from, wherever you travel, like, you are traveling. I was saying this to one of my friends the other day. I was talking to her about that when you travel, you are traveling with your country and your culture stereotypes, the bad ones. And, especially being English, there's many stereotypes of English what are problematic, that we don't try the languages. We expect everybody to speak English. We're loud. We get drunk. We trash places. We're demanding, whatever it is. And when I travel, I take great pride in the fact that I'm gonna squash those stereotypes. And it's very important for communication that we all do actually travel. There's another thing that people are, for the environment, all these other reasons that we don't travel, but just by traveling, I have made connections I have friends in 3 different states now in America. 4. There's somebody who watches these videos, and we are able to talk about each other's countries, and we're able to talk about each other's government, and talk about rumors we've heard, and we're able to break down. And when we break down, this is what I'm about to get to. When we break it down over bread or over FaceTime, whatever it is we do, we actually get to this common ground where that's a little bit like what I experienced. I was talking to my friend who lives in the States. She was talking about dating. I don't want to say who, just in case people, I don't know, people work out who I'm talking about. But she's talking about dating an ethnic group, dating into an ethnic group, how difficult it could be in the States. And I was talking about the same from my perspective, and then we come to this kind of like understanding. And I think that's the real power of travel. Of course, when you travel, you can also meet people what completely represent their countries to a stereotype. There's many people like I come across, and sometimes if I do like a sunbed relaxing vacation, I'll be around very English people who, and that can also be quite comforting when I've been in a country that doesn't speak any English, and I'm feeling a little lost, and I'm feeling like I just want to have a little chat with somebody or a little bit of comfort. It's really nice to see your own, your own, and that's what I kind of realized when I was a kid and I traveled. I just wanted to get out of England. I wanted to get away from the boomers and all this sort of thing. But as I got older, I actually genuinely enjoy going back to my grandma's and having tea and telling about my travels. And they have a few little stereotypes about places in the head, but it's kind of funny. You just take it with a pinch of salt. It's not too harmless. So when if we're talking about offense when it comes to traveling, if we're talking about offense when it comes to people, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking questions and talking to one another. It's just sometimes that if you're asking into a cult, you have to just be careful maybe how you word things. And sometimes, I've wrongly put my foot into something a few times by accident. You can see the person was a little bit annoyed, but then some people they've already got a thing in their head that if anybody says this thing about my culture, I'm ready for you to say something about your culture. Like you can go to a place and you read all the customs, like what to do. You have to tip like this. You have to do all this sort of stuff. Don't say thank you too much. You can do all those things, and then you can get a little bit relaxed, and you can accidentally go into your English people say thank you like 10 times. Like, oh thank you. Oh thank you. Oh cheers. Oh thank you. And you can do that, and they can look at you like, what is this person doing? So I find it a little bit too much. And that's kind of the interesting area you can sort of get yourself into. But just to sort of conclude this video, I genuinely believe travel is the most important thing for your health and for your life and for your ambition, because it fills you with hope. This isn't really about travel. I'm just going about it this way. This video isn't about travel. And I know what I'm saying now is been said a million times, and it's not an original thought, but I'm just kind of just reaffirming, like, because with what's happened in the world, we kind of forget that. We kind of look at one person as the enemy, and we can completely dismiss places because we're told not to travel to these places, or that these places are evil, or they're disrespectful, whatever. But we each, as I'm saying before, we have to be understanding. We have to go to places, and we have to obviously we keep our values, and we're happy to go home, but we have to look into a culture and really try and understand people. And then going back to what I'm saying at the very beginning of this, when we actually get down to the fundamentals, we are all the same. And I know people really don't understand that statement. There's a lot of people, when you say we're all the same, people just flip out. But humor, I'm talking about, there are some people who just humor is a universal language. Obviously, when it comes to actually telling a joke, that's not. But when it comes to physical, if you just raise your eyes like that at somebody, that's a universal language. And if somebody doesn't get that, it doesn't reflect the culture. It doesn't reflect that it's just somebody who isn't a very humorous person. So taking that in, I think we can be quite comfortable. I mean, if you look at like cities now, all cities have fast food chains, what are all the same, and coffee places what are the same, and most people are watching the same Netflix shows, and people have the same references, and people are learning different languages, and there's a lot of English now learning Spanish and Italian, all these different languages. So the world is becoming a melting pot, and we are all becoming a lot closer. And we can feel the, as we get older as well, we can feel the world getting a lot smaller, which I think is a positive thing. And as I'm saying at the beginning of the big video, I think we are all more together than you might realize, and it's just our own what can actually keep us away from one another, because they have these crazy views of I don't know if you've ever seen that video where there's the guy who wears the classical stereotypical Mexican outfit, and he goes onto like an American college campus, and everybody there says it's offensive, and he goes to Mexico, and everybody's like, oh no, it's fine, it's whatever. Of course, not all Mexicans might agree with the people, and we don't know if he's edited the video in a certain way. But there is this thing. It's like, I know there's nothing really you can really. I know the offence what English man can take is not as different as other countries and other races, but if somebody was to, whenever I get jokes thrown at me like English have bad teeth, or I find them really funny, and I find sometimes there's a little bit of truth in them, and I think that's what's quite funny. But we can't really talk about this thing. That's why I'm going to kind of cut myself short now. You know what I'm talking about. We can't really talk about this sort of thing because a lot of people don't understand this and they can't really handle it. And you know that's what, like they are trying to keep us apart, and they all want us to be apart, and they are wanting us to. Sometimes I'm a big believer in being individual, but sometimes the more of an individual we become, the more distance we become. You know, if we want to be so much an individual that we push everybody away and that it's all about me, it's about my struggles and my this, then you know, I've actively worked in fields and industries where an individual's made it all about them, and they've got pushed off some handicap, I don't know what it could be, and there was no positivity about it. They just wanted complete control because they felt they had been wrong, had like a wrongdoing in life. Like I've been in rooms where I've been with a guy who doesn't have hair. He's bald or bald in, and he's just took offence to me straight away because I have hair, and he doesn't want me to have a life because he doesn't feel confident because of his hair. When I could just shave it, grow a beard, and he's gonna look sick as hell. So yeah, it is the other people that keep us away from one another, and of course we're not all gonna get on. This is the thing. It's like we're not all gonna get on, but we're closer than you think. It's like your arch nemesis, your enemy, might actually watch the same shows you do and go to the same places and have similar opinions. Maybe that's the reason why your arch nemesis, your arch rivals. So yeah, I think it's nice feeling that everywhere I've ever gone, I can relate to somebody somewhere, and we can have, and I can also, I can't have these conversations on this platform, but I've come across people of a race who have spoken about stereotypes what are true, and I've been kind of floored, like, oh, you're actually just kind of agreeing with the stereotype, and then they've explained why that stereotype exists, and it's just completely intrigued me. Because there's so much in the West that we just don't ask these questions, and that we can't. So yeah, travel and you'll realize how small the world is, and you'll meet some people. Obviously, you can meet people if you check into a hostel or whatever, and go about it that way. All right, guys, have a good week. Ciao.